Perhaps the most celebrated man in our industry, master of his own destiny, tenacious, passionate, and fierce to sign and see to fruition some of the greatest themes of our time. Metallica, White Zombie, Nina Simone, Cyndi Lauper, and so many more. In his own words, you can't be good, you've got to be great. Welcome to the Scandalous Podcast. Michael Alago, how's your day so far?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Great. I had lunch just now with one of my favorite people. I think you've met him. He's big and handsome. His name is Robbie Olds, and he plays drums for Generation Kill.
Okay.
And,
I haven't met him.
I think you have. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Rob won't be pleased that you won't remember, but that's okay. So anyway, he's one of my favorite people, and he's a drummer. And soon, Generation Kill are going to be going on the road this year for maybe 10 or 12 nights with Flotsam and Jetsam, one of my other favorite metal bands, who I signed, I think, in 86 or 88 to Elektra. And we made a great record called No Place for Disgrace.
I try not to get starstruck, and it's very funny, and I just don't. But your accolades and just, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this. I'm going to keep on going with the interview, but I want you to know I'm blushing, and it's not the blush.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love it. Great.
Yeah. Well, kind of like what I just said, it really warms my heart to be speaking to you. I've watched your documentary, Who the Fuck Is That Guy? In your spirit, you ingratiated yourself in the scene, realized that people were real, the industry is real, and you could be a part of it, and I resonate with that. So I get to sit back, hear the stories, relive all of these awesome memories. I'm so excited. So let's get started.
Sure.
So getting to your early years, you seem to have that certain je ne sais quoi, something special about you. What kind of kid were you in school and growing up?
Sure. Well, I might incorporate two answers into one. I was a young, gay Puerto Rican kid growing up in Brooklyn. I always like to say I believe that I came out of the womb loving music. I was studious. Studious, that's a word? Yeah, I was studious, and I was quiet. Lots of times as a early teenager, I would sit on our stoop in Brooklyn and listen to 45s. Just music was my everything. And, I would also watch, all those shows on TV, Dick Clark's American Bandstand and Don Cornelius's Soul Train and the Midnight Special. And I was thrilled to hear and see all of those shows because it opened up my mind to, everyone from Aretha Franklin to Alice Cooper to Todd Rundgren to Grand Funk, to all of these various types of artists. And I was always thrilled that I could hear a variety of music. And to this day, as we speak, I still love a variety of music. I love the Great American Songbook, which is people like Tony Bennett, to black metal, which is this new artist that's just come out. He's on the road currently. And I was really shocked that there was a huge piece on him in the New York Times recently. He's called Black Braid. It's heavy. It's heavy.
I had him on the podcast.
What?
Yes. I worked on it. I love him. So I worked on getting him for so long. He made me wait like 8 months to get an interview with him. And I finally got an interview with him.
Oh,
and
good.
It was wonderful to talk to him. And you
Good.
can definitely tell it's kind of fun to get in on the ground floor of something special.
Absolutely. I agree.
And you can tell he's like a baby artist just starting out, but his story, do you know that he just put out music and got put on the Decibel like death metal tour. So like his first tour was the Decibel tour, which is a huge tour to get on. That takes, most artists years and years and years. It
Sure.
just doesn't exist. So the whole time I was just going, what? And I got invited to the show, Dark Funeral. So black metal, death metal. And
Those are the shows that just passed in May, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed it, but I missed it. But he's coming to play Brooklyn Meadows October 8th. So I'm definitely not going to miss that. And, I sent him a DM on IG and I said, my name is Michael Alago. I gave him the whole Michael Alago story. And I said, if you're looking for a manager, we should talk. So it took him like weeks to get back to me. I was like furious, just a little bit. And he wrote back to me and, he said it was nice to hear from me, but, he does mostly everything himself and he's not looking for a manager. So I just wrote back to him again. And I said, so be it. But maybe if you like, you can watch my documentary. And I'm definitely coming to see you in October. And congratulations on all the wonderful press you've been getting. So yeah, Black Braid is one of like my newest favorite artists. And I just started listening to that second album, I don't know, last month or so.
That's beautiful of you. And that would be such a wonder.
Yeah, we can't talk about Black Braid the whole time, just in case he's listening as well.
No, it's funny. I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
Sure.
But that I like, at this phase in your life, you can do whatever passion project you want. So,
Sure.
So I think that would have been like really fun for you to wave your magic wand and you would be like, bibbity bobbity boop. Here you go.
We'll see what the connection is like when I see him in person, not on stage in October. I think it'll be fun. I do.
Well, I'll have to have you back and talk. Here you go. Well, yes. Something you and I have in common, and I think a lot of people have in common on the documentary, your family talked about how you would just lock yourself in your room for days and days and days and listen to music. And I recently saw a show that I saw Stained and like a lot of those bands were what I listened to when I was in high school. And it really developed me so much and solidified. And I'm a grown woman now, but boy, if it doesn't take me back. So do you have some of those bands, some of those songs that just to this day, like, oh, that was everything to me back then?
Well, since I'm a bit older than you are, let's just say that as not preteen, but as an early teen, like I mentioned, I would watch those music shows on television. I also started listening to bands like Alice Cooper, Roxy Music, David Bowie, Todd Rundgren. And then, I don't know, at some point, 1977 rolled along. And I was hanging out a lot at CBGB. I was a bit underage, but Hilly Crystal, the owner, let all us kids in. It was our home away from home. So I was lucky to see and hear people like Johnny Thunders from the New York Dolls, Richard Hell. Then at one point, there was something Hilly brought in called the British Invasion. And that was, Eddie and the Hot Rods, a punk band called Chelsea, who I loved because they had a gay singer named Gene October, who I snatched up from CB's one night. I brought him home with me. I can't get off the beam here. Okay, so lots of stuff that I listened to when I was young. So in 1977, it wound up being a lot of punk stuff, like the Dead Boys, me and my friend Jody Rebello, we started a little fan club for them. And we made a zine named after their one of their songs called All This and More. But, we were like young kids and we didn't know, like, are we going to really start a fan club? So we really didn't do that. But we never, ever missed the Dead Boys growing up. Or at least in, 1977, 1978. So it's always nice to reminisce about things like that now, because, at some point, all I wound up caring about was hard rock and heavy metal. So I don't know if I actually answered your question or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to know who the bands were who touched you in your early youth that just really solidified
for
music. Yeah. Absolutely.
It was a wide variety. it's always been a wide variety with me and music. Lately, uh, in 2023, I listened to more dark black metal than ever before. For me, the heavier, the better. I just love things that are that heavy. It just kind of like, for me, it clears my head, believe it or not. I don't care if certain artists are ever going to get played on the radio. I mean, maybe they do, but if I love them, then you know what? I'm here to, rah, 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 and support.
That's awesome. So I'm a big proponent of that as well. I love country. I love rock. I love death metal. I've been in a great folk kind of mood the past like 4 or 5 months. And I would love to turn you on to an artist. She's called Paris Paloma. And I'll DM you her. But I think you would really like some of her songs.
Oh, wow.
And
thank you.
Yeah. She's just like, ooh, it feels good. And it's like, I put it on to just feel good and just like relax and feel effervescent. And it's good. And it's really good. So I love.
Did you say Paris Paloma?
Yeah. Paris
great.
Paloma.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Very wonderful. And I also, I love death metal. So my favorite death metal band to listen to and kind of zone out and relax is Fit for an Autopsy. Have you heard of them and do you listen to them?
Yeah. For a while, there was a show that unfortunately got canceled called Gimme Metal. And it was on for a long period of time. And there were always guest artists who hosted. And maybe every other month I hosted the show. And I would play things that were so dark. And yes, Fit for an Autopsy, I have played. But I love bands like Black Anvil and Necrofire from Houston. There are 2 young bands that I just saw recently at St. Vitus in Brooklyn called Morbid Cross, who I'm crazy about. They're a thrash band. And their friends played with them from Greenville, South Carolina, called Never Fall. So those are 2 brand new bands to the audience that may not know about them. Morbid Cross is from New Jersey, and Never Fall is from South Carolina. And they're thrash. And I think they're great.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And thank you.
It's always exciting to hear new things where people sometimes these days say, well, is there any good new music around? Well, there's lots of good music around. You have to just seek it out. A lot of the things I love are not on the radio. So I'm always asking friends what they're listening to. Or if I go to shows and I see young people there, I introduce myself and I want to know what they're listening to and why.
I love that. Still that ever classic A&R guy who needs to know what's going on.
Yes. I love my job. I did it well for almost 25 years. And it was just great to work with great artists, whether it was, the guys in Metallica, Metal Church, Flotsam and Jetsam, executive producing Cyndi Lauper. My favorite artist in the whole entire world was Nina Simone. And we were friends the last 18 years of her life. And I got to executive produce her final recording, which was really, for me, a blessing. It's a very sad record because she wanted to make a record about love and loneliness and loss. And that's exactly what we did. So we both loved these 2 albums, Frank Sinatra, A Man Alone, and Billie Holiday, whose last record was called Lady in Satin. Well, if those records aren't like slit your wrist records, I don't know what is. But we kind of like, we were like, okay, we love those records, but we don't want them to be that dark that people aren't going to listen to them. But anyway, I was just thrilled to always to work with Nina before she passed in 2003.
I'm definitely an empath. And when you talk about those records, like making something so deep and real, I got a visual in my mind of like walking up to like the edge of a pool that's empty and jumping in, or like walking up to, just being dangerous, and like walking up to the edge of a roof. And there's something powerful, everything is yin and yang. There's something powerful about going that deep and facing that type of darkness. Well, I just got back from New York myself, and I got a good fill at the city, went outside the city.
Wonderful.
But I really wish I could have gone to L'Amour's in the heyday of L'Amour's. Up front and center, small venue, and it feels dangerous. And that's what I like about rock. That's what I like about metal. What were some of your best times at L'Amour's back in the day?
So it's a funny thing. As a young teenager, once again, I lived in the Borough Park, Bay Ridge area of Brooklyn, under New Trick Avenue, which is where the elevated subway was. We lived, me, my mom, and my sister Cheryl lived in a railroad apartment. But in the front of the railroad apartment was my bedroom, which if I opened up my window and just look up, that's where the train was. So I slept through everything and anything. So we were on 55th Street, and L'Amour was on 62nd Street. So I would always walk to L'Amour and stumble home drunk. It was a fabulous place. It was fabulous in that, it was nothing like, it was like a box, you know? But we got to hear and see a lot of our favorite artists there. You know, I saw Metallica there. I saw Wendy O. Williams there, Armored Saint, Overkill, so many of those bands back then, which was, oh boy, let's see. I'm thinking more like around 82, 83. And it was just a fun place because everybody wanted to go to L'Amour to hear and see one of their favorite artists.
Well, that's fun. And, you know, it just feels so reminiscent of the good times of going to shows when I was younger. So your stories really make me smile. So thank you for sharing those. And they say history lives on when you pass it down. So what would you like to pass on to the younger generations to live in infamy just a little bit longer about New York in the 70s and 80s?
Well, I think everything is kind of cyclical. So not everything is going to come back. And I'm sorry if one was too young to go to CBGB, Great Gildersleeves, Max's Kansas City, and the likes, and Hurrah, which was on West 62nd Street uptown. So all I could say to younger people is sorry, but, sometimes the internet is really our friend. And like today, and one can go to YouTube and type in Dead Boys 1977, Misfits 1982. And it's not like being there, but if you have a nice screen on your computer, you can feel that energy of what was going on back then. They used to call New York Fear City back in the day. But even as an underage, younger than 18-year-old young man, I would take the train from Brooklyn with my little knapsack and my Nikon camera, or sometimes my Polaroid camera, or this little Kodak plastic Instamatic camera. And I would go to shows and snap pictures. So back then, I had no fear as a young little 15, 16, 17-year-old, taking the train from Brooklyn by myself and going to all these places because I read about it in the Village Voice. And so I would go see all these artists, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled. And, a lot of times I drank. So I would come home a little tipsy. But, I guess my mother let me go out as a young kid because she knew I had to go and hear the music. And I always did well in school. So that was like a plus as well, and which is why I think she sometimes let me go out, because I always did well in school. But yeah, there were times I'd come home on a weekday at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, getting off the elevated train, walking right downstairs to the apartment, and just having experienced it. Like I said, everybody from the Dead Boys to Cherry Vanilla to the Plasmatics to Alan Vega's band Suicide, there was always something going on in the city. And that was the beautiful thing about Manhattan back then. People may have had fear. I had no fear about being on the Bowery. I just, I knew how to walk down the street. I was from Brooklyn. Nobody was going to F with me at all. So I don't know. It was just not a blessing, but I was grateful that I knew about all these things to do, because all those things helped me once I started booking the Ritz, which people know these days as Webster Hall. I was 19 years old, and I started working at the Ritz when I was 19. And that happened because I was going to the School of Visual Arts and working at a pharmacy on Astor Place there in the East Village. And I say it in my documentary, Who the S Is That Guy? I don't know if people say the F word here, but whatever. And I was walking down the street and I saw a beautiful Art Deco building. And there was a little white piece of paper that said either, I think it said Video Club opening. And I was wondering, like, what the heck is that? So I, ballsy me, I walked into this venue. It was beautiful inside. Excuse me. And you have to remember, it's 1980 and it's the advent of MTV. So that's just starting. And I walked in and this man in the balcony, which I likened to The Wizard of Oz. And he's like, "Kid, what do you want?" I'm like, "I want a job." He said, "Well, do you have a resume?" I said, "No, I don't even know what a resume is." Well, he thought that was funny. So he called me up to his office. And again, but I mentioned this earlier. We started talking about the Great American Songbook, to what was going on in the underground scene in New York City. We talked for a while, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to give you a job here. You're going to answer the phone, you're going to get my lunch, and you're going to open my mail." And I thought, oh my God, I'm in the music business. This is what I want to do my whole life. And really, it was the beginning of me being in the music business. I was like a sponge. So my boss's name was Jerry Brandt, God rest his soul. He died during the pandemic about 2 years ago. He was fabulous. He was my mentor. And I would listen to everything Jerry said on the phone. If we knew that he was talking to Ian Copeland at FBI Booking, or Rob Light at ICM, or speaking to Tina Turner's management about having her come back to the Ritz, because she had been not performing for the longest time. And let's do 5 nights with her. And I would listen to him and the booking agents about what these things cost and what you would pay the artist. And we were looking to always fill a 1,500 seat room. So like I said, I was a sponge. I listened. And about a year into the job, besides getting his mail and opening up his mail, getting his lunch, and answering the phone, I was the assistant booking director there. And it was wild. It was fabulous. And I learned a lot. And at one point, I don't know, I thought that there was more. So I was going out with this young man named Mitchell Krasnow, and his dad was leaving Warner Brothers. And he said, "Michael, my dad's leaving Warner Brothers, and he's going to re-up Elektra." Because I think it was, I hate saying this, but I think it was in the crapper at that time, except they had like one hit artist, this guy, Greg Kinn, who was on Berserkly Records in California. And he had like a #1 hit called Jeopardy. Our Love is in Jeopardy. Bob Krasnow could have cared less about that style of music. So I don't know, 3 years go on. I'm at the Ritz from 80 to 83. And I interviewed for a job at Elektra. And I had the same conversation with Bob Krasnow that I had with Jerry Brandt about all types of music. But Bob was an art maven. So there was art thrown into that whole thing. And we talked about, the New York art of the day, whether that was Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring, Richard Hambleton. There were a whole host of artists and art dealers that I knew a lot about. And Bob was impressed that I knew all of that as well. So he said, "Great talking to you. I'll give you a call in the next 2 weeks." So so I don't go off on a really long tangent. So in about 2 weeks, he called me, and his assistant, Ruth Rosenberg, said, Michael, Bob is on the line for you. Please hold. And he said, Michael, I thoroughly enjoyed our talk, and I am offering you a job in the A&R department at Elektra. I think my mouth dropped open. I had a tear in my eye. And when I hung up, I called a friend of mine in the business. I said, I got an A&R job at Elektra, but you got to tell me, what does A&R mean? Well, they laughed in my face. For the audience who doesn't know, A&R is artist and repertoire. The A&R department is the most important department, or I'd like to think, at a record company, because the A&R person is finding great talent, nurturing them, and helping them to make records. For me, great records tell a story, and great albums always have a beginning, a middle, and end. And it takes the audience somewhere. And that's what you want. And I did that for 25 years. And it was wonderful. And the second act that I signed was Metallica. And talk about wow factor. And I'm going to say one more thing, and then I won't keep going on, because I could go on about Metallica till the end of time. Funny, here we are when let's see, we're in mid-August. About 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, I went to see Metallica at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. And that one Friday was August 3rd. It was James' 60th birthday. And it was the 39th year to the day that I signed Metallica to Elektra. And that happened at the Roseland show. And it was when they were playing with Anthrax and Raven. And the beauty also of that show was that I signed Metallica, Atlantic Records signed Raven, and Island Records signed Anthrax. So everybody walked away happy campers. Oh, now I'm tired.
I know what a happy ending doesn't always end up like that.
Yeah, sure. True.
Right.
But, these were young people in their 20s, early 20s, who really wanted it, as evident by, like, when I say Metallica, Raven, and Anthrax. These are still artists doing it today. Of course, the biggest of them all has been Metallica. They've been hard workers their whole lives. They always knew what they wanted, and they did it, And a lot of people still complain to me and like, well, those first three records are the only records that are good. Okay, whatever you say. So yes, Kill 'Em All was great. Ride the Lightning, brilliant. My favorite Metallica record. Master of Puppets, fabulous. But an artist cannot go on making the same records over and over again. Things could become stale. You don't grow from that. And because they always listened to themselves mostly and not me, they were always developing. They were all, and one may not love every single one of their albums, but these are wildly charismatic people who always did what they wanted, always had a point of view. And here we are talking about them 39 years later, and me having seen them at MetLife Stadium, 80,000 people each night. Wow.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow.
So I do want to kind of revisit your time at the Ritz, because I think it's really fascinating that you became an assistant and then were a booking assistant at the Ritz.
Yeah.
And the amount of information you learned, can you pass on any of what you've learned? And I don't know, any of the talking to Tina Turner's reps, like that's crazy fly on the wall kind of stuff. To remember any of those conversations, anything that stood out about it, anything that you're like, oh, that taught me this. Like, this was a really good lesson to learn. Like, I'm very curious about, all those times you've listened in on the phone.
Right. So I, over the years, I got a little crazy with drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm now, in October, I'll be 16 years clean and sober. back then as a young person, I said this. So I think what the audience can take away is if you wind up getting your dream job, you really have to pay attention. So my dream job, my paying attention was being a sponge and listening to every single thing Jerry said to artists, well, more managers and booking agents on the phone, so that I could learn how to speak to Ian Copeland and talk at FBI and talk about ticket prices and booking, and where at one point does the artist make more money because of ticket sales. And then it just became almost easy breezy for me because, like I said, I so wanted to be in the music business. I didn't know what that was going to be like as a young person because I don't play an instrument. But that didn't stop me because I knew I had to be there.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're singing to my heart. You really are.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm.
That's how I've always felt as well. And it's very inspiring to be talking to, because that's how I've always felt. Like, I don't want to be in a band. Mm-hmm. Geez, that's a lot of work. Like, band practice is a lot. Being a musician is a lot. I've never had a passion for that or wanted to do that, but I've always just been drawn to be in the music industry. So it's so fun listening to you talk about it. What a joy, right? It's just so fun. That's exciting. And what a great quote. If you get your dream job, you better pay attention. I think that's a great quote.
Yes, indeed.
There's a lot of knowledge behind that.
And it's also, I always say, when artists want to send me material still, although I don't listen to things as much as I used to, but when I was either at Elektra or Geffen, I said, it better be great, because there's a lot of good out there. And sometimes good is even okay to listen to. But I knew in my heart of hearts that if I was going to be involved with artists, they had to be great. They had to have a certain charisma. They had to have a certain point of view. They had to be saying something. I don't know if I just said they had to have universal appeal, but I'll say it again. So I knew whether I was working with Johnny Rotten or James Hetfield, or when our chairman signed a young woman named Tracy Chapman, and Bob said, Charles Koppelman at SBK Publishing signed her in publishing deal, and Brian will be her A&R person. They were friends because they went to Tufts University together in Boston. But in the end, I wound up being her A&R person, and it was a delight because what a beautiful recording she made. So it was always funny that if I was on this line with Tracy Chapman and I was on this line with John Lydon, trust me, each conversation sounded nothing like the next. It was like a certain way that I would speak to Tracy, and then there was a certain rock and roll, feel, the vibe of how I would speak to Rotten, who wasn't so rotten after all. But I was always blessed that I got to work with who I consider great artists.
Absolutely. And I think the overwhelming theme about you is that you have that magic about you, so you can see the magic in others, and your entire music industry career shone so bright because it's just kind of like you were going around being a magician, making lightning strike where you wanted it to go. And I think that's something that's very special about you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you got your first A&R job at Elektra, probably at the heyday of all the fun and the glitz and the glamour of being an A&R guy, I would say.
It was insane. I was 23. We also had in Los Angeles office, and there were bands on the West Coast on the Sunset Strip, whether they were bands like Guns N' Roses and Poison and Great White and all the bands that I can't even remember at this very moment. It was Dokken, George Lynch, all the artists that I was going to soon be working with, Metallica, Metal Church, Flotsam. There was an incredible energy happening. Did I say Motley Crue? If I didn't, Motley
Oh,
Crue. Uh, for me, I always gravitated more towards the heavier artists, but all of that was happening at the same time. So how wonderful to be in the mix of all of that, even if I wasn't working with certain artists, but we were all hanging out, on the Sunset Strip. It was always fun. I always wanted to be part of all that, and now I was. And never mind that once I signed Metallica, oh boy, everybody wanted to talk to me at Elektra. And I don't say that for ego purposes. It's because, they wound up being like one of the biggest bands in the world. But then they were climbing very quickly. They were selling out venues. The second album, Ride the Lightning, was even more brilliant than the insanity of Kill 'Em All. And then, because they're young, wise people, they make a record like Master of Puppets, which is a heavy metal classic. And so I think I'm going off the beam a little bit here. But, the 80s were an incredible time for me as a young A&R person to be out there mingling with other A&R people, with other people from record companies. And it was just like the time was just so right. And, when Bob Krasnow, our chairman, started putting the roster together, we had Metallica. He was on an airplane with Anita Baker. He was talking to Seymour Stein, telling Seymour Stein, you're not taking good care of the Cure. We want the Cure. So I forget who Bob and Seymour traded the Cure for, but we wound up getting the Cure. And Motley Crue. And there was a wide variety of extraordinary artists just on Elektra alone. And even later on, when I wound up making a switch to go to Geffen, they were signing people like Cher and Whitesnake and Beck and Sonic Youth. And I come in and sign the Misfits and Kane Roberts, who I simply adore, from Alice Cooper's band, and White Zombie, Million Seller. So I was always happy to be in the thick of it all. And I'm glad that I knew what the heck I was doing.
absolutely. So to also be very clear about it, I think it's really interesting. There's like 7-8 different things an A&R person does. So what are all of those different things besides, all the glitz and the glory that you just talked about? I think someone would also want to know, like, what the heck does an A&R person actually do, right?
Sure. Well, if I've signed you already, I'm going to probably be listening to all the songs you think are going to be on your album. So I'm still old school where I cut and paste stuff. I mean, I'm on the computer as well, but in the 80s, I had a notebook. I would make notes of songs and listen to the songs on the demos and what the arrangements were like. I would talk to the artists about the material, and if I felt like there could be a potential hit song there or not, or if they were one short of a hit song, we would talk about that begrudgingly to the artist. But, I always wanted to always elevate the art and the artist. And so that's what I was there for, listening to material, making sure there was enough songs that hopefully we could hope to have a hit record. Like I said, I love when records take you on a journey. Now that we've listened to all the material, both the artist and myself, we're going to start looking for a producer, having conversations and meetings with producers to see if they feel what the artist and myself feel. And then, I put a budget together. And let's see, I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, but, there's a lot of stuff that does go into making a record before you actually get into the studio, which is the few things that I just mentioned to you. And then hopefully while you're making this record, you're praying to the metal gods, to the heavens, that, wow, I hope this is going to be a hit record. So I don't know. I think I answered your question.
Absolutely. You definitely did. And that tells me, if I didn't know it before, like I knew A&R people had like a big hand in it, but that really solidifies and tells me so much of, you know, you're like another member of the band, essentially. Kind of,
sort of, yeah.
Kind of, you know, kind of, sort of, yeah, absolutely. A little bit.
Sure.
Because you have a big hand in their art and how it's perceived and how it moves forward.
And how it's presented, yes. And also, you know, it's like when you say I could be like the fourth member, the fifth member, but it's always great to have those extra ears that, you know, the band is listening to their songs and doing their thing, and they want to just do their thing. But I would pop in and just give them more guidance, you know? So it's the extra set of ears that's always very helpful, as well as the A&R person.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, you know, Metallica's rise was so, you know, astronomically, there aren't words for it really. Is there anything that was kind of special about the way you guys promoted Metallica that kind of helped helped make happen what happened? You know, I'm really curious about, you know, oh my God, Metallica blew up. I'm like, okay, like what were the steps that you guys took? I'm kind of curious about that. Of like, okay, we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this. Is there kind of a list of things that you guys did to make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll start at the beginning. I'll try to be as concise as possible. They had made a record called Kill 'Em All with a little label called Megaforce Records. God bless Johnny Z and his wife, Marcia, who have since passed. So God bless them. John and I became colleagues very quickly. They had money to make a couple of records. I think they made an Anthrax record, a Testament record, a Raven record, and a Metallica record. John wanted me to sign Raven. He thought they were going to be the biggest band in the whole world. I gave them $5,000, and I said, give me back 5 fabulous songs. He gave me back 5 fabulous songs. But the problem was, I heard Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All was unlike anything I had ever heard before. It wasn't like traditional metal. There was hard rock, speed, punk, all meshed into this debut record. And I thought, oh, I have to sign these people. John was not happy with me. The label was not happy with me, Megaforce. But, you know, they couldn't do for them what a label like Elektra, who was part of Time Warner, could do for them. You know, major corporation. So we're talking. I let him know that I didn't want to sign Raven, that I was signing Metallica. Metallica was starting to make Ride the Lightning. And, you know, they were the buzz band back then. They were the band, the young band making the most noise. And, you know, with good reason. They were fabulous on stage. They were crazy and relentless, and people just took a liking to them from the get-go. So we wind up signing them. The first record we put out with them is their second record, Ride the Lightning. We already know that there really isn't, it isn't a radio record at all, no matter what. So I think some of the people in radio were wondering, well, Michael, could you edit one of the songs? And I thought to myself, if I ever mentioned editing a song back then to Lars and James, they would shoot me. I would never have their approval ever again. And so I had to, in one of our Wednesday or Monday marketing meetings, I had to tell marketing, promotion, radio, there is no radio song on here. Maybe college radio will wind up playing them. But no, we are not editing anything at all whatsoever. So the key thing was to give them enough money for the next year to go on the road. And so it was about advertising in all the corporate magazines, like a billboard and a cash box, to all the publications that marketed and promoted hard rock and heavy metal, whether that was hard rock, rip. I just drew a blank, but it had nothing to do with radio. It had to do with magazine promotion and giving them money to go on the road. And that just, the more they went on the road that year, the more people got to see them. And then just started blowing up. It was just the nature of the beast that they were that great back then, even, that it just started blowing up. And like I said, here we are in 2023. They're bigger and better than ever. And they play stadiums. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. The ball has only rolled uphill ever since. And that absolutely does answer my question. I have another side question. So going into that meeting, did all of your experience in the industry just make you feel untouchable, or were you a little nervous? Were you solid in your frame going into that meeting, telling them that there's no radio hit here? We're going to have to do the zines, and we're going to have to do our best marketing in all these other realms, and I don't have a radio song for you. Right. Did that scare? I mean, like, what kind of person are you? Did that scare you at all, or are you just balls of steel?
No,
all the time.
Keep in mind, I had only been at the job 2-3 years. It was my first job at a corporation, so I did have some fear, but I knew I had to stick up for my band. I knew what had to be done, and that was that. You know, there was no arguing. You know. Bob Krasnow used to say a lot of times, if there was a band or a single artist that had a radio hit, he would say, if you can't get it on the radio, don't come to work tomorrow. And he meant it. Thank God I didn't have that problem. It was about, Bob, we got to give these young people enough money to go on the road for the next year. We have to do advertising in every market that they're going into. And all of that I've been saying to you, it's like, the rest is history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That even paints more of a picture. So, you know, you always hear about your history, but it's kind of interesting to me to kind of know what you were thinking at the time. You're like, okay, I know I'm right, but it's not scary going into the meeting and saying that, you know?
But it was nerve-wracking because, like I said, I was a young person. This was my first A&R job. And most of the folks who worked at Elektra were seasoned people, the head of marketing, the head of promotion, the head publicist, the head of radio. You know, they weren't all youngins like myself. They weren't old, but it was like, it wasn't all their first jobs. This was my first job. And I had got this thing called Metallica, and it's wild and it's spreading fast. And thank God everybody got on board at Elektra.
There you go. Thank God.
Yeah.
I had a funny side question because I think every time I go to order Chinese food, I'll think about it. Do you remember what beer and what Chinese food, what you specifically had on the table when you signed Metallica? Because I know it was over beer and Chinese food. I think that's a hilarious dinner party idea. Every time you go to the liquor store, you look at beer or something like that, or a Chinese food menu. I think it's a good theme.
So to answer that question, I signed them August 3rd, 1984. I think that Monday they were in my office in the conference room. And no, I'm lucky I remember my names sometime. But no, it's just, I don't remember the kind of beer and the water and the Chinese food, but we ate a lot of it. Because we're talking about 1984, I gave them a lot of vinyl and cassettes, they wanted stuff like the Doors, the Stooges, the MC5, Cliff, God rest his soul, so adorable, so wonderful, great musician. He was like, Alago, do you have Simon and Garfunkel? I'm like, darling, I don't have Simon and Garfunkel, but I will call Columbia Records. They're just down the street and get you Simon and Garfunkel. Cliff always loved things that were a bit, other than the Misfits, were esoteric. And we had a label called None Such that made a lot of orchestral and esoteric music. So I gave him a box of vinyl of that. And I feel like it was such a connection because remember, we are all young people in our early 20s. So they knew I related to them and to the music. I wasn't an old executive, in that conference room with them. So, we could talk about metal. We could talk about all the craziness that we've been up to and so on. So, they trusted me. And that was also a beautiful thing. And also, I felt like after that Chinese food lunch, it almost made me feel that they never left the office. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. See, it's fun if you're an empath because you feel everything.
You're telling me.
I love that. And I do want to say when we spoke about this interview, I really misspoke because I knew who you were, the things you've done, accolades and respect. This person was a big deal kind of feel is how I felt about you. But I was uninformed about how groundbreaking and pioneering it was for an openly gay man to be such a badass, a big deal, and the guy to go to for a record contract in metal. So if they were for your lifestyle or against it, they had to respect it. You were an originator, a trailblazer in that sense. Anything you would like to say about that time?
Sure.
Some good times where you just stood in your power and it felt great.
It's a funny thing, and I don't know how this came to be in my mind that I never cared what people thought about me. I don't know how that happened, where it came from, but I felt like I also, besides loving music coming out of the womb, I felt like I was gay coming out of the womb, and I just never cared. And, I always stood up for myself each and every time I needed to. If you didn't like me, go fuck yourself. That was my attitude. And I was openly gay, and I was always like the type of person that, again, if you didn't like me, there's nothing I could do about it. But I wanted you, the young artist, and most of these metal artists were all guys to begin with, that all came to my office. I closed the door and we put on music really loud, and we were all the same. And I said this before, I'd like to think that when these young people left my office, I helped them be a bit more comfortable with somebody who was gay, who they may have never met a gay person before, being, wherever the hell they were from, in some heavy metal band that they played in a basement in their family's home or whatever. So I was always open. I was always glad about being open, and I never cared what people thought about me. So that was always very helpful.
Good for you. I mean, that's such an original point of view, never caring whatever thought of you. I'm just because everything is so mental, and if you can think it, you can do it. So that's so interesting to think about, because you can will things into being, and everyone cares what everyone thinks about them all the time. So if you can think about, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, you can start to actually encompass that. And if you choose to believe that you can actually kind of release some of those things, ties that bind.
Correct. And if that's how one feels, you learn to manifest almost anything. Not everything works out, but because we're human beings, we're not perfect, but we do the best that we can all the time. And, when I wanted to get something done, I would wish it in my head. And a lot of times it manifested right before me. And again, I use the word blessing a lot because my whole life has been a blessing. I got very ill in the 90s, and I thought I was going to die. and I was still drinking, believe it or not, and doing drugs. And I had HIV, and at one point I had full-blown AIDS, and there was no medication. And I was lying on my sofa with something they call wasting syndrome. And I literally was wasting away. And I had a doctor, her name was Barbara Starrett, fabulous lady. And she was smart, and she worked in the labs, and she was the head of like the HIV ward at St. Vincent's Hospital. And at one point she said, you know what, Michael, there's no medicine yet. As your primary care, we have to do something. In one arm, she gave me an IV of vitamins. And this arm, she gave me an IV of something called pentamidine because my lungs were shot. And that was all very helpful. I must have lied on that sofa for about a year. And, I always tell this story, and I like it when Matthew McConaughey made that movie, Jesus. What movie did
Dallas Buyers Club?
Oh, Dallas Buyers Club. At one point, he was going to Mexico for these little pills. And Barbara at one point said, we're not there yet, but we got these pills from Mexico, and we don't know what they're going to do. And I said, Barbara, when all that we men are living with is fear, give me the damn pill. Now, I took the pills. I don't know if they didn't do anything bad, but I didn't know if they did anything good. And then finally, medicine came out called AZT, and Barbara again said, as your primary care doctor, this medication came out. I don't want you to take it. Whatever you say. You're keeping me alive here. I'm not taking it. All the young men that I knew, specifically in the music business, took AZT, and it was in a year they were gone because they didn't know, the big pharma companies didn't know how much to give them. Are you giving them this much? Are you giving them that much? And I'm grateful once again that Barbara, I never took any of that stuff. Some medication came along about a year and a half later. I think it was called Sequinavir. I can't believe I'm remembering all this stuff. But I guess when important things happen in one's life, you remember. And soon after that, I was back at work at Elektra. I was skinny, but I had I got my sustenance back. I think people also wondered, oh, can I hug Michael? Can I shake his hand? People were still leery about stuff like that. But, it's like, you don't get HIV by giving somebody a handshake or a hug, but, that was the mindset back then. In any event, we can fast forward that here I am. All that was 33 years ago. I never got sick like that again, thank God. I think it was all the candles that my sweet mother Blanche lit to St. Jude for me that helped. And also, if you believe in something, you can manifest that as well. And I believed in everything my mother did for me. So here we are, 2023, and I take one pill, one state-of-the-art pill called Biktarvy. And, I go get my bloods checked every 6 months, and my viral load is at 0, non-detectable. Now, again, if that's not a blessing, if that's not a miracle, if that's not, thank you, Jesus, I don't know what is, because, I'm one of the few of all the men that I knew in the 80s who survived.
It's such a story, and you kind of forget how far we've come with stigma of things, because I realized when I said what to you, I was like, before really researching your story that deeply, I was like, isn't it more inclusive to not talk about, just have a gay man in metal and not talk about, oh my God, he's gay? I was like, isn't that more inclusive?
No, it's important
to do that.
People be aware of people and things that they may not have experienced before. And maybe that's, opening up somebody's mind who never would have thought of, oh, I'm meeting a gay A&R person. Yes, you are. Or, wow, my cousin had, somebody would then say, my cousin has HIV as well. But, it really is, it's a miracle that I did, because I was literally wasting away. And it's a miracle that 33 years or so later, I'm just so healthy, and I'm healthy because I don't drink or drug anymore. I'll be 64 October 13th. I'll be October 21st. I'll have 16 years clean and sober. And like I said, my viral load is non-detectable. It's great.
It's wonderful. And
I'm grateful.
It goes to show, like, my way of thinking when I first spoke to you of like, oh, do we need to talk about it or not? Yeah, we really do, because we forget how far we've come.
And maybe our conversation is helping the audience out there, hearing things they may not have heard before. And that could be a plus for them,
Absolutely. You're very right. Yes. And I just researching your story. It's funny how I almost forgot. I was like, wow, it wasn't that long ago. And sometimes it feels, like, yeah, but just kind of looking at your history and your story, it's like, wow, don't take it for granted. And, I don't have the proper words to say what I mean to say, but you know what I mean,
These days, I don't take anything for granted. I wake up with gratitude. I say my prayers. My prayers sometimes consist of my old Catholic school prayers, or just once my feet hit the ground, I just say, thank you, God. Thank you, universe, for waking me up. Thank you for the roof over my head. Thank you for my friends in the 12-step program. Thank you for the relationship with my sister Cheryl since Mom passed away. And that list of thank yous could go on forever. I'm sick and tired of that list. But it all keeps my mind clear and focused. And where are we going with all of this?
Well, gratitude.
Gratitude
is the best way to keep yourself out of depression. And you, of course, of all people, and this is a great segue, because I kind of, wanted to ask about this, but we don't celebrate our wins typically. Life comes at you fast and you don't celebrate. So if you slow down, you're grateful, you can save yourself a lot of woe is me and depression just by realizing and having a laundry list of everything that you're actually really grateful for. Because oftentimes we don't celebrate our successes, which is a great segue into a question I have for you. Were you freaked out, or oh my God, or whoa, with all of your success that you were having in your career, in the middle of it? You had your outward persona, but were you ever oh my God, oh my God, oh my God?
No, it's
so cool.
It didn't matter. Stop! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! I was just a very hard worker. Okay. I was always a hard worker, and I was grateful that I got to hook up and sign and or be friends with, the artists that I've mentioned previously. It was a blessing, I think, for both of us that we worked with each other, because they learned from me and I learned from them musically, things that I may not have known before. But no, my 25 years was just, I don't know how I withstood the labels and how they, me. I'm saying that my English right now is so bad. But no, I don't know how the labels put up with me or how I put up with the labels, but I did my job for 25 years, whether I was coming back from being deathly ill or whether I was coming back from rehab, and I just kept my focus. And I was always clear with artists about how I heard the music, and it was, I think the wow factor always came in when the records were successful and they either went gold or platinum. And that was always delightful, if that's a good word, to hear. So I, like I said, I was just always a hard worker, and I was grateful to work with the labels and the artists that I worked with.
Great question. Not great question. Great answer. Good answer. Good answer. I love it. So admittedly, I don't know a lot about Cyndi Lauper's career, but I know that she's an astounding, wonderful, rebellious woman, and I would like to know more about her. What are some of your favorite songs of hers? Because I would love to experience her as an artist through your lens.
Oh, sure. You know, you must know her first big hit was Girls
Yes.
Just That was a huge debut album for her, with that hair, that colorful red and yellow hair, that unique voice that was so big and beautiful. And she just continued making great records, you know. I met her when she was in Blue Angel, a band that I booked at the Ritz. And then years later, we became friends because her manager, Lisa Barbarese, and I worked together both at Elektra and at Geffen. Cyndi is an extraordinary artist. She's in my documentary. She's a perfectionist, and I don't blame her. Cyndi had Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Time After Time, True Colors, All Through the Night, Money Changes Everything. And she was on a roll for a very long time. And then she wasn't on a roll, but she consistently made records. She made a very beautiful record called Hat Full of Stars. It's a beautiful recording. So that's, even if you don't know where to start with her, start with the first album, go to the True Colors album, go to Hat Full of Stars, and you'll get a nice breadth of material from those recordings. And I love Cyndi. And, she asked me to work with her when I had already been out of the business 4 years. She was going to make a dance recording. And she said, Michael, I'm making a dance record. Do you want to help? I said, absolutely. And she made a record called Bring It to the Brink. Like, bring it to the edge, bring it to the brink. And I assisted with her just with working in her home studio in Connecticut and listening to the material and talking about the songs. And then a year later, 2010, she called me back and she said, in that voice of hers, that Cyndi Lauper, Brooklyn Queens voice, Michael, I'm going to make a record, and I'm going to make a blues record. Did you ever make a blues record? I said, no, Cyndi. She goes, well, I know you know how to make a Metallica record. I said, well, darling, did you ever make a blues record? She said, no. I said, well, then we're on an even working plane. So again, Chinese food comes into the picture. I would go to her home on the Upper West Side and sit in her kitchen. And she had boxes full of blues sets. We went on the computer and started looking up certain blues artists. We had to pick songs that would then come from a woman's point of view. Oh, God, did we pick so many songs. And we sat in our kitchen eating Chinese food. It's all my fault. The Chinese food. It's always all my fault. We then found a wonderful, wonderful younger producer named Scott Bomar. He has his own studio in Memphis, Tennessee. And we went down to meet with Scott. He kind of demoed 2 songs with Cyndi. She loved them. We then wound up making this recording called Memphis Blues. It's a stunning record. People say, well, who would have thunk Cyndi Lauper could make a blues album? She did. It's extraordinary. And it got nominated for Best Contemporary Blues Album. We didn't win the Grammy. But what it signaled to both of us is that we did great work. And there you go. That was enough. So there's a little Cyndi Lauper for you.
Yay.
With pleasure.
You're the cutest personality. I love it. It's so fun. You're such a fun person to talk to. And moving on to your favorite artist, Nina Simone.
Oh, God.
Tell me about your love affair with Nina Simone as an artist.
Good.
And a person.
Yeah. as a young kid in Brooklyn, I used to always go visit my Aunt Jenny's house, my dad's sister Jenny, and she was real hip. She had records like Shaft by Isaac Hayes, Johnny Mathis, Nina Simone. I remember hearing a song back then, and to me, I don't know if I had the word androgynous in my vocabulary, but it was a very deep voice. I knew it was a woman, but it was like, wow. And I heard this song she did back in the day called Mississippi Goddamn. It's a song she wrote in the 60s. And it was about the civil rights riots. It was about the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Alabama. It spoke of the murder of this man, Medgar Evans. And it was the song encapsulated the turmoil of the 60s. And I thought, wow, this is unlike any song I have heard before. So I carried that over into, once I started buying vinyl as a teenager, I bought lots of Nina Simone. When I was at Elektra, I knew I wanted to sign her, but everyone thought she was a has-been. Never a has-been in my book. You know, she was an artist that could sing anything from Bob Dylan to George Harrison, and she did. And she did it beautifully. And those songs, it makes you think, oh, wait a minute. Did she write that? She didn't. She just was an artist who knew how to handle all types of material. So it's 1983. I go see her at Irving Plaza, which we then call Swing Plaza. They wanted it to sound very jazzy. I never thought of her as a jazz artist, simply for the reasons that I just told you. She could sing anyone's song and make it her own. We have to fast forward now, almost 10 years later, and I sign her to Elektra. We make a very beautiful record about love and loneliness and loss called A Single Woman. It was produced by Andre Fisher. He was the drummer in Chaka Khan's band Rufus. At the time, he was married to Natalie Cole. He was extraordinary. And it was a bit of a love fest, except when she was in a mood, and it wasn't a love fest. I executive produced the album, which meant that I helped pick the material for the recording, because like I said to you, all recordings should have a beginning, a middle, and end, and tell a story. So we made that record. She refused to go on the road to promote it. She did The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. We got an extraordinary write-up by James Gavin in the New York Times. And after that, she just told me she wasn't doing anything to promote the record. Very typical of Nina Simone, but I gave her a pass all the time. I didn't care. So we stayed in touch that whole time, even when she was dropped from Elektra. The very last time I saw her was 1999. I went to her show in London. It was part of a series that Nick Cave from The Birthday Party was putting together. Every night it was a different artist. One night it was Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. One night it was Elvis Costello. One night it was Suicide. One night it was Nina Simone. And so I went to her hotel in London with 24 white roses and a bottle of champagne. It's July, I believe, of 1999. She sees me come into the room and she's like, oh, my darling, my sugar lips. What are you doing? I said, I'm coming to see you tonight. She chased all the women in her hotel room out. They were cornrowing her hair. They were ironing her clothes. And she said, let's take a bubble bath. So she got naked. I was, this is where the fear came in on my part. I was not going to get naked, but I took off everything but my boxer shorts. We got into the bathtub. We laughed like teenagers. We drank champagne. I saw her that night at the Meltdown series. It was an extraordinary show. And there are stories about that night as well, but they'll go on for too long, which is why I encourage people to get my book. I Am Michael Alago. The Nina Simone chapter is the longest chapter of the whole darn book. with pleasure, once again. We stayed in touch. 1999 goes by, and she is ill. She has a stroke. She has breast cancer. And I loved her so much, so much. And something happened, which I will never forget. I was going, it's mid-April 2003. I was going to my dad's grave in Brooklyn. And I was bringing cleaning stuff because, the dead of winter, I wanted just to clean the gravestone and put some new plants there and stuff. And something said to me as I was leaving the house, call Nina. Okay, yeah. It's heavy in my head. Call Nina. So I call Aix-en-Provence in the south of France, and the housekeeper answers, and I said, hi, is Dr. Simone there? Because I always like to be proper with anybody who worked for her. And she said, oh, is this Mr. Alago? I said, yes. She said, oh, you can't. She's not up for speaking to anybody. She's really very ill. So when Nina knew it was me on the phone, again, she said, is that my sugar lips? How come you didn't marry me? So the housekeeper knew to put her on the phone. And I said, hello, my darling. How are you? She said, I'm not good. I said, it's okay. You'll get better. She said, how come we never got married? I know you're gay and everything, but that didn't mean that we could never get married. I said, well, you know what? I love you so much. I am going to my dad's grave today, but have Clifton, her assistant, either call me back or have Juanita, the housekeeper, call me, and I'm going to get on a flight in the next day or so to the south of France. I go deal with my dad's stuff. I come back home. Usually I don't leave the computer on overnight, and I left the computer on overnight, and I usually don't have CNN or MSNBC on my computer. I wake up the next day. I turn on, I click on so that I can see what's going on. And on the top of the screen, it said, Nina Simone, dead at 70. Blew my mind. Oh, I cried for the longest time. Couldn't believe it. Just spoke to her the day before. And I knew she really wasn't well, but I didn't know she was just going to go. And I couldn't listen to her music for, the next year or two. I just couldn't do it. And then finally, something said, wait a minute, you love this woman so much, put on the music, celebrate the artist. And I did that. And, for all my years since then, I love Nina Simone. I can listen to every single one of her records. And she was a joy to have in my life, as I believe I was a joy to have in her life, because we really did love each other. She was extraordinary. And that's it. We just loved each other. It was a great thing. So that's some of my Nina Simone stories.
That is so beautiful. And does a little story like that just make all the pain in life worthwhile?
Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh,
it's deeply personal. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
And that, give yourself grace and slack, like a year or two, even that's really quick to even start listening again, because it's so profound and it's so
very profound.
It's so so bad to listen.
Yes.
But
like I said, something in my head about a year or two later said, what are you doing? Celebrate me. Put the music back on. Sing to it. Dance to it. Just, celebrate your friend. Celebrate your friend. And I did that. And it was cathartic.
What's your go-to song when you're going to go put her music on? What do you always go to first?
Oh, that's a good one. She made a record called, well, there are a few. There's Nina Simone in concert. There's Forbidden Fruit. There isn't one particular song, but if you're asking me, I'm going to change the subject a little and lift both of our spirits up a bit. One of my favorite rock tunes, if I want to pick myself up, or if I am on my way to go to a concert, I'll turn up Wood from Alice in Chains, written by Jerry Cantrell. One of my favorite rock songs ever. And that song, they wrote that for what's the kid's name? Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone. And Wood and Wood are what they call, what is that called? Homophones, where words sound the same, but they're spelled differently, and they have different meanings. But what a dark song. And just one of my all-time favorite rock songs, that if I'm going out, or if I want to lift my spirits, or if I want to hear something super duper loud and hope that the neighbors don't come in and ask me to lower the music, I play that album. I listen to Wood. I play that album, Dirt. Today, as a matter of fact, on my Facebook page, on the top of the page, I was writing about, or just posted about, my two favorite albums recently. Again, is Metallica 1991, the Black Album, and Alice in Chains, Dirt, 1992. So I've been listening to a lot of those two records, and I didn't want to abruptly change the channel, so to speak. But, we gave Nina a lot of time here, and I spoke lovingly and beautifully about her. And like I said, she's the biggest chapter in my memoir. So one can read about her there. One can read some fun stuff about Metallica in the book, and just about the history of my life in music, and getting sober from alcohol and surviving great health scares. And here we are.